Hi, and welcome. My name is Siobhan Starling Lewis, and this is a training on loss, stages of grief, Maslow's theory of hierarchy of needs, and Erik Erikson's theory of social emotional development. Loss can be understood as an emotional result of life's many changes. There are two types of loss: maturational and situational. Maturational loss. Maturational loss are losses that are associated with normal human development, and that most people will experience them within their lifetime. They typically are expected and usually can be planned for. We must realize that most loss can also be understood as simple life changes. Some examples of maturational loss include starting school, retirement, loss of mobility, marriage, and even death. Maturational loss, like all loss, contains within it both positive and negatives, gains and losses. For example, when we started school or daycare, we lost the security of being at home with our primary caretaker, but we also gained independence and socialization with our peers and our teachers. Another example of the positives and negatives of maturational loss is in retirement. We lose part of our identity as a worker and possibly bring in less money. But we can also know that we gain free time, new hobbies, and even new relationships. Can you think of some other examples of maturational loss? What are the losses associated? And on the other side, what are the gains or positives associated? The second kind of loss is situational loss. These are losses that are typically unexpected. They're usually not events that we would choose to occur, and they typically cannot be planned for. When they happen to each individual is unique. Some examples of situational loss are illness, loss of employment, abuse, divorce, being a victim of a crime, and the death of a child. Situational loss, like maturational loss, contain within them both positives and negatives, losses and gains. For example, losing a job would involve the loss of money and stability, but it could also offer a chance to develop new talents, interests, or return to school for more education. Another example of a situational loss that has both positive and negatives is divorce, which includes, of course, the loss of a marriage. But there's also a chance to gain a new and healthier relationship later. With situational loss, it's important to really understand what is the loss. Can you think of some other examples of situational losses? What are the negatives or the losses associated with it? And what are the gains associated with it? Because as we've reviewed before, all loss has both positives and negatives. Now let's review. Losses result from changes that occur in life. There are two types of loss: maturational and situational. Maturational are natural parts of human maturity and development. They can often be expected and planned. On the other hand, situational losses are unexpected, unplanned, and often undesired. All loss has a combination of positives and negatives, losses and gains. The next topic we're going to discuss are the stages of grief. Grief is the mental, emotional, and spiritual journey of processing a loss. Although there is some debate regarding all of the stages of grief, here are the most commonly accepted. Shock and denial, which is a disbelief or minimizing of the loss. Anger, which is aggressive actions which can include fighting, harsh words, bargaining, trying to make a deal with one's higher power. For example, if after I lost my ring, I declared, "God, if you help me find my ring, I'll be a better person," that would be an attempt at bargaining. The other stages of grief are despair and depression, which is marked by a sense of hopelessness, possibly crying, self-blame, trouble sleeping, a poor appetite. The final stage of grief is acceptance, which is coming to fully understand the situation. Note that people vary in the stages that they display, based upon the individual loss. They may stay in some stages longer than others, or they may skip certain stages altogether. Now let's review. Grief is the journey of processing loss. And the stages of grief that were discussed include shock denial, anger, bargaining, despair, depression, and acceptance. The next topic that we're going to cover is Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory. Abraham Maslow established this theory in the late 1950s and early 1960s. It's the theory that human beings are being motivated by unsatisfied needs, and that certain lower needs need to be satisfied before higher needs can be satisfied. Here we have pictured is Maslow's triangle of the hierarchy of needs. At the bottom is the most basic needs. Physiological. Above that is the need for safety. Above that is the need for social needs to be fulfilled. Above that is the need for self-esteem. And above that is the need for self-actualization. The physiological or survival needs are our basic needs to survive. They include air, food, water, sleep, and sex. When we move beyond our physiological needs, we reach our need for safety. This involves the need for establishing stability and consistency in a chaotic world. These needs include a need for security, a need for shelter, and a need for law and order. The next more complicated set of needs are our social needs. These needs include a need to feel accepted, a need to feel loved by others, and a need to feel desired. Beyond our social needs are our needs for self-esteem. These needs include a need for confidence, a need for competence, a need not to feel like a failure, a need for attention, and a need for recognition.